Uh, we're going to talk about the data and the risk and applying it to risk assessment within our communities. We're going to talk about education and resources, what this program has in store with that and access to that for fire service. And we're going to talk about outreach with this particular subject. Outreach is important for all prevention that we're looking at. With smoking material fire, it becomes a critical part of that. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit more and then go into hopefully a roundtable with some questions and discussion. So next slide, please. So organized here. So the Smoking Material Fire Program, it's a critical initiative. It's aimed at providing information and resources to the Oregon Fire Service to promote fire safety of smoking materials. And while we do not endorse smoking, it is our responsibility to ensure that we're educating individuals who do smoke to be as safe as possible when doing so. That summary is from our Cassie Keller in Public Affairs. I told her I was going to plagiarize it today as it sums up the program, and it does identify. We're not here to talk about not smoking, but we are here to talk about if you do smoke, to do it safely. And so when we talk about the program's objectives, we're looking to engage fire service by offering data that will support community profile assessment efforts related to smoking material fire risks. We start with the data, right, when we're assessing our communities, and we're looking with this program to be able to provide data specific to smoking material fire service here in Oregon that lets them look at that in an efficient manner and determine how they want to go about educating within their community with it. The program looks to promote safety through best practices and tools. Through the education, we're not reinventing the wheel. The message is the same. It's based off of NFPA messaging. We're just here to enhance it, bring it forward to Oregon's population, and incorporate what's relevant for them. And we're looking to build and trust the program as a reliable resource for smoking material fire safety information. Ideally, this program would act as a platform for fire service to come to, a beacon, if you will, that it's a good starting point for fire service to look at smoking material fire program information, materials they can access, reports that they can lean into. Some of those reports were sent out with this invite and will be included in links at the end if Sarah hasn't already added them. So those are just some of the materials and resources that we're looking to provide. When you start digging into any kind of a community risk and you're doing the research, it's time consuming. And so the purpose of that was to kind of bring as much of that valuable material to one source so that you could access it there. Next slide. So to understand where we are going, we kind of needed to understand where we've been. And so this is just a brief history of the path that has been taken over the course of about 15 years with smoking fire prevention. Much of it related to health, but it's interesting how these go hand in hand. So in 2008, Oregon becomes the 9th state to enact fire-safe cigarette requirements in law, and the Oregon State Fire Marshal and the DOJ still collaborate on monitoring that to ensure that we're keeping fire-safe cigarettes in the state of Oregon versus the others. In 2009, ICAA, that's the Indoor Clean Air Act legislation, protecting the public from secondhand smoke, is initiated, and enforcement for that is through the Oregon Health Authority. And that's backed up in 2009 by Oregon banning the sales and manufacturing of novelty lighters. So the ones that look like toys that kids could get a hold of and start unintentional fires with. And as we get into 2011, there's the Smoke-Free Housing Initiative. So all of these laws and legislation have gone into play, and now we have to start educating the public on it. So the Oregon State Fire Marshal couples with the Oregon Housing Authority and some others in a smoke-free housing initiative, and that's out educating the public on how we're providing public housing that's smoke-free. It's educating landlords on providing smoking policies to potential renters. And it's just getting everyone up to speed on what the expectations are now. And off to the right, you'll see a postcard that was created back in 2000, I think it was 2011, regarding that. And this is the Oregon State Fire Marshal safety message going out. In the bottom corner, you'll see a QR code. If the reader clicked on that, it takes them to Smoke Free Oregon. It still works. I clicked on it, and it still is, in fact, it takes you to the site. So good to know that that's material still out there and it's still effective. And then between 2015 and 2019, various campaigns involving OLST, which is the Oregon Life Safety Team, are taking place. Most of that is designated to that smoke-free housing initiative and educating landlords and tenants on expectations of that. And so that's just kind of the history behind where we are now. Can I get the next slide, please? So as we're looking at smoking material data, the smoking material fire data, this is just a summary of some of the aspects we were looking at. We went back 10 years and then we kind of narrowed it down to a 5-year, and then we were able to collect on 2022 because we were originally looking at 2017 through 2021. And then we were able to add 2022 in there. So this is a 6-year perspective. 9,529 fires caused from smoking materials here in Oregon. 1,072 were involved structure fires. There were 62 fatalities resulting from smoking material fires, and 17 of those involved home oxygen therapy. Side note, this is about smoking material fire. We will be adding home oxygen therapy fire safety prevention to this umbrella. It's coming up here shortly, but we're working on that. So just understand that that's the cousin that's going to be joining the smoking material fire program here shortly. These two numbers regarding fatalities were just confirmed this week. A and I worked on that. They had needed some clarification, and we got those results back. So this is the number as of this week on those fatalities. And then there was an estimated $30.8 million in property loss resulting from smoking material fires. All of that, and only 12.5% of Oregonians smoke. We know that the risk of injury and death for smoking material fires increases with the vulnerable populations. It's the youth, older adults, the people with the disabilities, people on home oxygen, those facing social economic hardships and homelessness. And it's when I was digging into the research regarding just big tobacco, if you will. It's interesting how they target these demographics to smoke. The youth, those with disabilities, those with social economic hardships that they go after hard. And that's, we'll get to it here in a few, but it's where Oregon Health Authority steps in and tries to mitigate that for our society. So we'll get to that here in a minute. But see if I'm missing any other information here. Nope, that's good. Next slide, please. So continued on with the data, we're looking at the summary for the Oregon State Fire Marshal, summary 2022, and smoking, as you can see, is coming up there on fire causes as third at 7%. And causes for single and multi-family structures is coming in at 3%, 90 of those showing up under that particular cause. I did highlight other unintentional, that's the category that, well, it's other, it's unintentional. And I guess my mind always goes to, well, how many of those might have involved, smoking materials? Things that we consider when we're looking at data and we're looking at risk assessment for our communities and these areas that we look into. Next slide, please. So the next slide we're going over is same summary from 2022, and it's a heat source, top 10. This, we see cigarette coming in at 90, and then heat and other open flame, smoking materials other, coming in 87. Lighters are on there at 67. And then some other areas that that I looked at when we were, and considered, I wonder, hot ember or ash, and then hot or smoldering object or other, just considerations when we're looking at the importance of, and I appreciate all the fire agencies that go out and report daily on the fire incidences that they're responding to, and how we lean into this data every day. Thank you so much for all that information, because this kind of gives us the direction of where we need to go with it. And so when we are noting in NFIRS or whatever system being used, where this information goes and how we use it is so important. Next slide, please. So this particular slide, we were able to update with current information from this week regarding the fatalities. This is a 6-year look at fatalities from 2017 through 2022, with 45 involving smoking and 17 involving home oxygen while smoking materials and while on home oxygen, for a total of 62 overall. It's a big number, and one that we're looking at, especially regarding that home oxygen therapy, because these are very preventable losses that we could be talking about more. Next slide, please. So the next slide is giving us a 10-year perspective of how we're trending with the smoking material fires in Oregon. The trend indicates that we're on the decline, which is amazing and awesome. And that will continue if we continue with our public education and our community outreach efforts. That's how we're going to impact this number. So we can see that we're trending down. We know our average is 1,663. It's quite a bit, but we know that with our efforts, we can continue this trend, keeping the message and the drum beating with the prevention that we're trying to execute here. The bottom chart indicates structure fires over, I believe, 2017 through 2022, 1 and 2 family and multifamily structures. And then the bottom line was a curiosity. I was asking A&I if they could pull structure other, and we were trying to determine what that could look like, because we were trying to understand how there's a lot of fires occurring, not necessarily in what we would call traditional housing, but those that are living in RVs or trailers or other structures, and understanding the implications of when those fires occur and how often. So we were just looking here to try to identify and pull some information. It was just more of an interest point, one that I feel many of us in our communities are looking at as we struggle with homelessness and trying to keep people safe. So this was an interesting poll, just one that I wanted to throw out there. There's a report on NFPA. It's actually pretty recent. It was done by Shelby Hall, and I believe, it was this year. 2023. So fires, he indicates on here, fires started from smoking materials have been a leading cause of home fire fatalities for decades, right? We've known that. The 5% of home fires started by smoking materials nationally, 2016 to through 2020, caused 24% of fire deaths and 7% of injuries. So this is still a topic that definitely deserves our attention and focus and ability to communicate it out within our public and talk about it more. Next slide, please. Again, this is an interesting slide. We were looking at area of origin, not from a structure perspective. I know that's what our focus is most of the time, but this one was talking about area of origin along highways, parking lots, and streets. It was just an interesting one that came up because at the end of the day, fire service is responding to these. It's taking resources from fire service. So in looking at it, identifying where they're happening, obviously in higher populations, that count is going to look higher. But looking at what possible education could we be, campaigning with in focusing on discarding of smoking materials properly. Obviously, not all of these are smoking material fires, but they probably, some of them attributed to these. So just something that we were looking at. I found it was interesting and I wanted to share that with you. Next slide. So as we accumulate all this data, we wanted to create some messaging that went along with it, providing data and messaging together. And we've done so here. This is a sample of the two boxes to the left are the rack card, front and back. One side provides data related to Oregon smoking material fires, and the other side is messaging, safety messaging, prevention messaging. Our public affairs team created this. They did a great job. And then to the right is a flyer. It's one-sided on this. It would make a good poster or maybe in a plexiglass stand if you're at an event. Just sitting there, it would at least provide some data related to smoking material fires and catch the attention of readers. Just share the message on it. These two particular versions are going to be in digital format. They're going to be available in Spanish as well. It's NFPA messaging, I believe I've said that. But then there'll be a hard copy of a brochure, a separate brochure. We're going to see a sample of that here in a minute. But these are going to be in digital format and available in our soft launch of the program in February. Can I get the next slide, Sarah? Thank you. So when we're talking about resources, we look at fire because that's our lane and we're looking at all the data related to that. But there's also a benefit to looking outside of our information and looking at other information that impacts a particular topic we're talking about. For this, I turned to the Oregon Health Authority. We've been partners with them in the past. I reached out and they agreed to partner with us again. They're great. They're amazing partners. They're receptive and we're willing to come on board and be part of this. We're partnering with them through the Tobacco Prevention and Education Program in Smoke-Free Oregon. With that, the Oregon Health Authority is a great resource for information related to smoking material, or I should say those that smoking, people that smoke in Oregon and how it's impacting Oregonians. And so this was a great resource for me to look at and understand the bigger problem of what smoking is. So I could identify a little bit better with how to approach it from an educational perspective, also with demographics. And it just was, there's a lot of information here. I would suggest those that are interested to take a look. They've got a lot of great information. One of the primary responsibilities of the Oregon Tobacco Prevention Program is to collect and report on data. And so they do a really good, thorough job on that. And you can drill down into it by county. So that's nice to be able to at least get it down into that demographic for yourselves. It's important, right, that we're educating and connecting with community. And often we have to, we invite community to come to us, but often we have to go to the community and meet them where they're at. And this is through partnerships, and that's how we do that. And so partnering with Oregon Health Authority has been a nice way of venturing into ways that we can get into the public eye regarding fire safety and smoking materials. Next slide, please. So this slide demonstrates the brochure that we created. It's not the whole brochure. It got kind of messy when I tried to fit the whole thing on there, so I snipped it down a little bit. It's missing 2 panels of information, but you get the gist. It's a Z fold. It's very lovely. There's a panel there dedicated to Oregon Health and Smoke-Free Oregon with a QR code that takes the reader to the quit line. And so this was us partnering together. Again, we're not saying anyone here can't smoke, but if you do smoke, we want you to do it safely. Here's the messaging that'll help communicate that. And if you are thinking about quitting, then there's a link to that as well. Nicotine dependence is a chronic relapsing condition. It takes years to achieve abstinence from it. So even with medical intervention. So being able to at least understand that, provide that link, as well as talk about if you're going to smoke, do it safely. Here's ways you can practice that, is what we're trying to achieve with this brochure. It's available in 5 languages. It's printed, or I should say it's hard copy. You can get it in English and Spanish, but available in Chinese, Russian, and Vietnamese digital copies. So with that, I want to take a moment. Hopefully, Connor Foley, are you on this call?
Yeah.
Hi. Sarah, can you pop up the next slide for me? I want to introduce Connor to the group. Connor works for the Marion County Health and Human Services Department. He is the Tobacco Prevention and Education Program Coordinator there. And thank you for joining us today, Connor. I was hoping maybe you could come on and tell the group a little bit about what you're doing with the Tobacco Prevention Education Program.
Yeah, absolutely. I can, just first, thanks for having me on. And my name is Connor Foley. I work with Marion County Health and Human Services on our tobacco prevention and education program. And our work in prevention is primarily focused on trying to stop a problem before it starts, by addressing the root causes of a problem like nicotine addiction, which we often refer to as upstream work. But we also know it's important to address the risk posed to people who have already fallen into the river, in this case, who use tobacco, which is why getting and increasing access to resources to help folks quit is a huge and fundamental part of our work. So after talking and meeting with Paula last fall, really excited to see the flyer that has come out of this, and that it includes information on the Oregon Tobacco Quit line. We know that most people who smoke, almost 70%, actually want to quit. And as Paula mentioned, it takes many years and times of trying and lots of resources and help. So the more we can get that information in front of folks, along with this information on the risk posed by fires started by combustible tobacco, so that maybe we're linking that with an increased perception of harm for those folks, is really important. So we also do lots of work with youth around vaping and e-cigarettes, as well as just general tobacco education. In general, tobacco use rates have gone down dramatically over the last 60 years, 70 years. But vaping is sort of the new rising problem that we're also trying to address.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on, Connor. Connor and I, interestingly, when we're talking about partnerships and connections, I met Connor through Sally Cook, who is a health educator with Marion County. She came to Oregon State Fire Marshal, gathered some materials that she needed for an event, and then sent us an email a few days later. Said, thank you. And if you need any connections through Marion County Health, on these particular areas, I can get you a connection. One of them was tobacco prevention education. And so I said, hey, Sally, yeah, hook me up with whoever's handling that in Marion County. And it was Connor. And so Connor and I have chatted several times, and look forward to working with Connor in the future regarding this. It's like you said, Connor, it's taking that message and getting it out there. It's interesting how education funnels in different ways, and it might not necessarily be the intent, right, to necessarily put a smoking material fire brochure out, right? When you're trying to prevent the smoker from smoking to begin with, but it has a potential for making an impact. And we appreciate you considering that and taking it forward into the world for us as we look at means for getting that message out there. So Sarah, I'm sorry, Connor, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, absolutely. Thanks for partnering with us.
Yes, thank you. Sarah, are there any questions or anything filtering out there?
There's nothing coming through in the chat. One of the questions that I just kind of wanted to ask, I think a hesitation that some of us might have at the local level is approaching our health department about something that, like you guys said, about this is a topic where we're not going to say don't smoke because that's not our lane. So Connor, I guess my question to you is if your local people are coming to you saying, and maybe your message doesn't completely connect, is that still partnerships that you're willing to have? And is it worth fire service approaching that as far as if the message isn't exactly the same?
Yeah, absolutely. I would think that any health department would be excited to partner to increase the spread of those resources. And we could also help to advise on and sort of how to frame the problem in a way that's not shaming people for smoking, but also really addressing the risk that it poses, and not saying like the only option is for you to quit and that you never should have started in the first place. We know that messaging doesn't work. So that's I think you'd have good luck approaching any health department.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Connor.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat.
Okay.
To the next slide.
Next slide is basically roundtable and questions.
So, and I might pose back to the group, if there's anybody in the group who's currently working with your health departments or has experience working with this topic, we'd love to kind of just kind of see who is or isn't, even if you just want to do one of the reaction hands up, that's helpful, I think, too.
Is there anyone out there working or looking at incorporating, I would hope, smoking material fire prevention into their education?
We have a quiet group today.
We do have a quiet group.
Hopefully, as the months go on, you all will be a little bit more. We have a thumbs up coming in. And I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but we also have some participants from some other states. And I'm curious if this kind of work is happening in other states as well.
Oh, yeah. I will add, in researching this, there's a lot of states out there. Oh, brochures. Brochures are going to be available. I see that question, Sarah. They're available now. You can actually go onto our website through the material request and get them there. And they're both in English and Spanish.
And then it looks like we have questions from Marcy and Larry. So Marcy, you want to pop on first and then Larry?
Mine's not a question, but I am with the state. So with the state of North Dakota, we are 1 year into our CRR journey. So we have lots of ideas and lots of partnerships that we're trying to work with, but we did, our fire marshal is really interested in the fire breaks. And a few months ago, we did a training where we got some and we let our deputies try them and played with them and did some, smoking and done some work with that. They also, the last training we did, they did a training on trying to see if cigarettes really will light a mattress on fire, because there was actually some debate among our people.
Sure.
So we've done some trainings with the deputies like that. And we've actually had a medical oxygen fire death fairly recently. So I think that stuff is taking off a little bit more here, and that's probably going to pull our focus that direction. So this is timely for us. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and we're looking at home oxygen as well, home oxygen therapy and the risks associated with that. Tomorrow it's on my agenda. So yeah, it's definitely something we're looking at here as well. Thank you for sharing that.
And then Larry.
Yeah, sure. So the home oxygen is the question I had. Does the state or Oregon Health Authority or anything that work with any like the home oxygen delivery companies now? I know it's a big issue within our community that a lot of times we roll in on a difficulty breathing and call, and they've got home oxygen on and sitting there trying to have their last cigarette before we put them in the back of the ambulance. So it would be great to be able to have some, preventative on the front end of that with the home oxygen companies. I don't know if they're regulatory to give any of that information out. And if not, then on the back end of it for us, that we would be able to help educate the community on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know that I can't speak to the regulation of them, but I feel like it would benefit us reaching out to them to share our information so that they could use it if they choose to. I know when I was researching home oxygen companies, most all that I saw, they provide safety instructions. It's my understanding that when somebody goes into the home, they're talking about that as well, but definitely worth discussion. It's a big topic right now. So yeah, we're focused on it.
Okay. All right.
I did just want to acknowledge that Amber added the order form into the chat for those who are kind of new to working with our program. We have lots of resources available. You can order them. If you're in Oregon, they come in packs of 50 and you can order them from our website. If you are outside of Oregon and you want to share resources, just reach out to myself or Paula or anyone on our team, and we can kind of figure out how to make that work. We love to share our resources and do not think anyone should have to reinvent the wheel if we already have it and we're working on it and we feel like it's we put a lot of work into things. We want them to go as far as they can possibly go. So just reach out because we do some sharing. Obviously, we don't have the printing budget to print for the entire country, but we're always willing to share files and those kind of things. And then Max said, yes, this will reach. Oh, here we go. This is my reading ability. Yes, this will reach out to a demographic that we don't normally get to tap into. Super excited to get our hands on this material. I appreciate that comment so much. And then Eric Rao is internal to us. And he says, even though I don't use this information in my day job, I certainly appreciate the thoughtfulness and thoroughness that you have shown in putting this together. So kudos to you, Paula. One of the things I should have probably started this with is we brought Paula in and said, hey, you're going to be a program coordinator. Oh, and here is a topic that doesn't have anything built for it. And go. And Paula has done this so eloquently, and her ability to kind of make these partnerships and see things in a way that we really weren't sure where this program was going to go is super impressive. So I'm excited to kind of see how it grows and where we're going from this. And if and we'll definitely be updating, through our fire prevention listserv, which is where most of you probably heard about this webinar, through our Oregon Life Safety team. If there's ever a time that these things come up and you want to be able to connect with someone or bounce ideas or there's stuff that you're looking for, definitely reach out to us because these things will grow. We're definitely in a growth era, if you will, for our education at the State Fire Marshal's Office. And so this is one that I instantly was, Paula, will you please kick off our webinar series because the work that's happening here is really important and really being done well. So just a little plug there. We're a little past time, so if there's any last questions, I think Larry, that's probably your hand up from before, I would guess. Like I said, this has been recorded, so we'll get it to others. We have our next webinar coming sorry, I was going to grab that link real quick. Coming on the last Tuesday of February, which is February 27th at 1 o'clock, I will put the registration link into the chat, and then there'll also be an email going out. We're working on getting your feedback afterwards also, so be looking for an additional email from me, just kind of asking for feedback. And like I said, we're going to do this every month. Next month's webinar, we're really excited. So just like with us and growth that's happening within the education unit, our analytics and intelligence unit has grown exponentially. They went from a party of 2 to I think there's 8 on the team, or will be. I might be wrong. Don't quote me. Don't put me in the paper or anything, because that might not be right, but it's definitely grown because we are really focusing in on how we further community risk reduction, and that all starts with data. So next month, we're going to have Dr. Eric Emmel, who leads our analytics and intelligence unit. I assume probably a few other members of that unit will pop on as well, to discuss some of the tools that will be coming for you all to use when you're doing planning and engaging with community risk reduction, and kind of talk about what might be shifting as far as how we're getting information and what we're tracking, and how we can use it. So I really hope that that's engaging for all of you. Even if you're out of state, we love to be able to kind of model what's happening here, and answer questions that might be relevant to you all. So I appreciate Paula and Connor, thank you so much for putting this together and kind of kicking this all off for us. Thank you everybody else for attending. When those announcements come out, please share far and wide, because we want to be able to kind of reach as many people as we can. And if there's no other questions, we'll send you off.
Thank you, everybody.